Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the RacePlazaMedia podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the second to last race of the Formula One season.
Oh, boy.
The Qatar race. There was a sprint and a regular race.
Yes.
And spoiler alert, neither were that interesting.
And it was messy.
It was messy, especially the main race.
Yeah, it was just a major fumble. But we'll get into that now.
Yes, so first things first, my name is Milan. Across from me is my sister.
Pia.
And yeah, let's get right into it. First of all, for the sprint race, I don't think we need to lose a lot of words about it. It was quite underwhelming.
Yeah.
I am a little bit annoyed that we got up at 6 a.m. for this nonsense. Because it was, I don't think really anything happened. I think the big thing was it Lando losing out the position to Max, right, going into... So Yuki out-qualified Max, which was pretty insane.
Big, yes,
and
exactly.
then he did his job. He essentially harassed Alonso, and then he was able to make the pass, kind of held up Alonso, and then Max was able to pass Alonso, was able to pass... Yuki, then obviously him moving to the side. I did find it quite interesting that people online were saying like, oh, do you think Yuki will make space for Max? And then some people were like, no, because Max wouldn't. And the thing about it is like these are completely two different situations.
Yes, very different situations.
I know that there was this whole incident with him and Checo in the, like, what is it, Brazil race or last race of 2023. But the whole thing was also that this was essentially Max getting back to him for what happened in Monaco. That is essentially the rumor. But like, this is someone who's fighting for the championship, who is the number one driver.
Yeah.
And this is someone who is most likely losing his his seat, or who's desperately trying to appease the team for him to keep his seat.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Yuki.
being Yuki. So he's not going to be the one who's going to be like, well, listen, let me show you guys how I'm going to outrace Max. It's not happening.
No. So it made sense that he made way for him, or he helped Max maneuver through it. But it was a very uneventful race. Oscar ended up winning, which is great for him.
He also needed that. He had been missing from the podium since Monza.
Yes.
Right? So it's been a long time.
Yeah. So it was nice to have him back in the front. We had George come in second, and then Lando come in third, followed by Max, which was helpful for the overall point standing, because going into this weekend, the situation was Lando had to outscore Oscar and Max, because they were equal in points going into the weekend, by 1 point, meaning that after the race weekend concluded, he would be leading by 26 points.
And that would be enough to win the championship.
Exactly.
He could have clinched the championship.
Exactly, because then nobody else would be able to make enough points in the following weekend, which is only a single race, to catch him, essentially.
And considering that this year we're no longer getting the extra point for having the fastest lap.
Correct. So then after the sprint race, there was still a chance for Lando to clinch the overall driver championship. So things were still open, or still everything to fight for Max, Piastri, and Lando. But Lando had a decent chance to win, potentially, depending on how the start goes. But we had, after qualifying, we did have Oscar on pole next to
Lando,
and then behind them we have Max and then George in row 2.
Yeah. So then the start happened. I don't think we really need to talk about anything else. So the start happened. Max had excellent start, and immediately was able to overtake Lando, because Lando again struggled with his starts. This seems to be his biggest weakness in all of his driving.
He had some really good ones this year, but then oftentimes, especially when he starts against Max, they always start against each other, but when it's really a battle between the two of them, Max typically has the upper hand.
I think it's overall, actually, his stats are pretty bad when he goes into, especially also from pole, he had a really bad stat.
But what I was saying was that it has been getting better.
It's been getting better, but it's not good enough.
No, of course not, especially if you are competing to be driver champion of 2025. So that needs to be driver champion level.
Yeah.
But yeah, so going into the start, it was a pretty clean start overall. Unfortunately, Ocon had ended up getting a 5-second penalty due to moving right before.
Kind of like what Antonelli did in Vegas.
Exactly, which is such a bummer because he wasn't leaving the line before.
It was just literally like maybe a centimeter.
Yeah,
was the
car moved while it wasn't.
And in reality, like this does not give you an advantage.
No,
in any way.
But the sensor picks it up, and then you get a penalty. If the sensor is triggered,
yes, then that's what it is. I do remember. I think there was a Lando false start once, and the movement was quite a lot more egregious, and the sensor did not pick anything up. So it is quite interesting how that works.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not faulting Lando. So sometimes you get a little bit lucky, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think he even said in his post-race interview, it threw him off of his race, of his start, because you're like, you're immediately like, it probably changes where your focus is.
Yeah, you're immediately like, fuck.
Yeah, exactly. However, then the big thing really happened. I think this was lap 7. We had Nico Hülkenberg in I think was it 7th position, and then Pierre Gasly in 6th. And they were Hülkenberg was trying to overtake going into, I think it was T1. Because I think he was coming from DRS, and then it was the right-hander.
Oh, okay. I don't remember what turn it was, but yeah.
I think it was, and then he was trying to go on the outside. Pierre Gasly was on the inside, and then they end up making contact. Nico ended up spinning out, and he immediately had a puncture, and he was out.
Yes.
Gasly was able to limp essentially back to the pits, but that ended up triggering a safety car. And then Piastri in P1 and Lando in P3 were the only ones not to pit at lap 8. And for the Qatar Grand Prix, there was the special regulations. You could only do a maximum of 25 laps on any tire that you're on, meaning this was a guaranteed 2-stop race at a minimum. I think Ocon unfortunately had to do a 4-stop race or some bullshit because he got a little bit unlucky. We'll get to that maybe a little bit later. But essentially, by making that pit stop, it cost Piastri the win.
Or by not making that pit stop.
Yeah, by not making that pit stop.
Because literally Max and everybody behind
literally everyone else.
For the most part, did a pit.
No, everyone pitted.
Was everybody? Yeah. But anyways, so everybody went into the pit, which was also chaos.
It was chaos.
Everybody was in the pits like back to back to back to back. So there was lots happening. We did have...
that meant also, because this was perfectly timed by Williams, that Sainz was one of the few people who actually jumped a position during the pit, because his pit stop was really clean, and then his release was really clean, because there were obviously, I think all teams essentially did a double stack, and that cost both drivers most of the time. It cost them time because the pit lane was so full, you couldn't release into it. George Russell, for example, was unreleased or was released unsafely. He was able to avoid the other driver. Not blaming Russell whatsoever for this. There's no way that he could see that with everyone standing there, and also having very limited visibility in
but
an
he
F1
also
car.
had to even wait going into the pits because Kimi Antonelli was ahead of him. The same thing with the Ferraris. They did a double stack, and Lewis had to wait because he was the one in second position, just because there was so much traffic. So, of course, it is a very tricky situation. But like you said, for Williams, for Carlos, it worked out wonderfully. So perfectly. So he made up so many positions.
So I think he made up 2. But so he ended up
jumping
which is
to already
it's huge.
A lot, especially on that track.
So he ended up net essentially in P3. And at that time, and then it was just a race to the end, essentially. That meant, because the McLarens didn't pit, and it is very interesting that they didn't pit, because like over the weekend they obviously run 10,000s of simulations on what could happen, especially in a race where you're mandatory a 2-pit race. It is interesting that they were never considered, what do we do, or that they considered if there's gonna be a safety car, because the safety car for them pitting in lap 8, this was the perfect time, essentially because 25 laps later they will pit again, and then
they'll take it to the end,
and then they take it to the end.
Yes.
And that was also the maximum, because if this would have happened 2 laps earlier, it would have not been the case. It had to be lap 8 or later for this to happen. And for McLaren to do this, and so I don't want to be like super dramatic, right? But we give Ferrari deservedly a lot of crap for fucking up their strategy, right? And McLaren, I think the only grace is that they have that they were able to put together a car that is essentially a rocket ship. It is like inarguably the fastest car on the track.
Yeah.
And but they have consistently throughout last season and this season, they have had some really questionable strategy calls, including this one, which cost Piastri P1 and Lando essentially P2 or P3.
Yeah.
Because Lando ended up, he was also struggling more, I guess, because he was end up being also in dirty air. I don't know if he had some damage, but he finished in P4, which there we'll get into that in just a second as well. But it was like you cost both of your drivers valuable points.
Yeah, and also, and
Max ended up winning the race very clearly.
Yes.
Like he was like 8 seconds ahead of Piastri. Piastri opted to pit in the second pit a little bit earlier to try to hunt him down. But
it's like a pit stop there was anywhere between 28 to 29 seconds. So that's what he had to... they had to make up the difference that they lost in not pitting in the safety car, which is still several seconds.
You save 10 seconds, right?
So
At least.
That's a lot to make up. But then also what I was going to say, so the incident happens, the safety car comes out. We have Oscar in the front, Max second, Lando third. Piastri passes the pit lane. You see Max pitting. Why didn't you, like, obviously I would have been pissed if they would have pitted Lando and not Oscar because I'm more of an Oscar supporter. But like, why didn't you then immediately react and put Lando in and then change his tire to at least save his race, you know? I mean, clearly they weren't prepared for it because they were also the first team in the pit lane. So they might have not gotten the tires and everything ready by the time Lando would have gotten into position maybe. I don't know. But I think there was time to react.
There was plenty of time to react.
There was time to react. There's two, like you had said, they run all these simulations throughout the whole weekend, and they would have known what is the window when a safety car comes out. Like if it comes out lap 8 or later, then we have to do the pit stop then, just to save the time. But then for them to not do it, it destroyed. Like once that happened, we knew the race was over. Because unless there is another safety car that comes out, but it's not incredibly common in that track because that track has a lot of runoff area so that even if you go off track, you're often able to save the car and come back onto the track. The only reason that Nico couldn't is because he also hit one of those like breaker marks. So,
and he had a puncture.
Exactly, but and then sometimes with a puncture, even you can drive it back to
as in
the
like
pits.
the tire was completely off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then that's different, but like it's not always the case. You know, we also had Isaac Hadjar, 2 laps to go. He ended up getting a puncture, and he ended up being able to drive it back.
His tire did stay on, and unfortunately that did ruin his race because he was driving in the points.
But it's like there's I feel like there's a smaller chance for a safety car on a track like that because Qatar was also built for motorbike racing, so there's a lot of runoff area for safety reasons, of course. So you don't immediately run into a wall and you need a safety car, you know?
Yeah.
So it's so frustrating that it's yet again a strategy. I'm not saying that the McLaren drivers are perfect. They've both made mistakes throughout the season that definitely hurt their points. But we have, I would say, almost more strategy calls or team decisions that hurt one or the other driver.
Yeah, I think
especially Oscar.
Yeah, I mean, especially like I know he said in a post in an interview that he does think about the Monza decision quite a lot now because this has cost him significant points now.
Because he would now still be ahead of Max.
And obviously also much closer to Lando. Yeah. And this is like I mean, this is something that he will just have to take with him and learn. And if he doesn't win the championship this year, then I do hope that he gets to fight for it again, because you will, you will take this with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's like,
He'll have a chip on his shoulder almost.
yeah, or it's just like something that he'll remember. It's like, I
Or
will
a fuel,
never,
yes.
and maybe also going into next season then, because there's no driver change in McLaren, there's going to be definitely a different atmosphere.
Yeah.
Because even if Lando ends up winning, his contract still doesn't say that he's the second driver. And it's also this thing, it's like, well, I've played so nice, and you essentially guys contributed almost more to Lando winning than me, even though like Oscar was like the first half of the season, you can't fault him for anything, right?
Yeah.
And then also it doesn't help that he got screwed over twice with super hard unnecessary punishment or penalties from the FIA.
Yeah.
So
and it's also like, it's crazy that there is a chance for now Red Bull to have a driver champion again. I mean, obviously Max is an excellent world-class, multiple world champion driver. But if we would have looked at during the summer break, we would have never thought.
No, I mean, he was down over 100 points,
exactly,
right?
but it's unbelievable. And then also Max had, I think, recently said in an interview, if I would have been a McLaren driver, I would have already won the championship.
Yeah, I mean, so Lando said that, Max obviously knows a lot of things, but there's certain things he doesn't know about, but he is free to say whatever he wants. Yeah. I will say, right? And this is someone who is kind of rooting for Max to win it, because I am just so fed up with McLaren and their bullshit. I've said it multiple times.
Yeah.
Is that you do have to say that Max is not racing against anyone else in his team, right?
Yes.
Whereas the McLaren drivers are constantly picking off points off of each other.
Yeah.
And we also have to be realistic. I don't think Max would be putting in as many numbers or winning as many races against Lando or Oscar. You have to say that the quality of drivers that he's racing against within his own team have always been significantly less than other people. You have to say that.
Would you say that Checo was significantly worse of a driver than Lando and Oscar?
Yeah. I'm not, so like Checo is an excellent driver, right? And also like seeing also all the problems with the car, but Checo is kind of like Bottas, right? He's a very good driver, but he was very good second driver, right? He was not as of the level of Max or Lewis, right? Same machinery, but you weren't able to put it down as much, right? Whereas Lando and Oscar
are both number one drivers
in a way, or neither, or they're just drivers, right? None assigned, no number assigned.
Yeah.
But it's like the quality or the level between Oscar and Lando. I can't say that one is significantly better than the other. I think they both have their strengths and their weaknesses, but I don't think you can say like, because you can't tell me that like Max and Yuki are comparable. Yeah. Max or Liam, Max or Checo were ever comparable.
No,
right?
Of course. But and then the one argument you could say, and I think some people use for this, which I think we can use for now, but I think eventually it comes to a point where we can't say that anymore, is that Oscar is only in his third season.
Yeah. And what is it? DC said once he was in his fifth year, he felt he was like at where he needed to be. And I think I said Lando was in his eighth year, but I think Lando's actually in his sixth or seventh.
Yeah, but it's still double.
Yeah, it's double the amount
Oscar has. So there's like this thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, but in the end, like, you're not gonna think back and be like, well, Michael Schumacher when he was racing against Barrichello, right? Who was in what year? We're not talking about that anymore, right?
No, exactly. So then now,
however, I do want to say real quick, like, I'm not taking away that I think Max is an exceptional talent.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that Lando is as good of a driver as Max or Oscar, but I'm saying they're better drivers than his teammates. And I think that's fair.
Well, yeah. And before we go into one other big thing that happened during the race, or one positive thing that happened during the race, we go into next weekend's race, the final race of the season, the final race of this triple header, which will then decide the overall driver championship. Currently, we have Lando still leading by 408 points. Then we have Max in second with 396 points. And then we have Oscar in third with 392 points.
So that essentially means if Max wins, he would get 25 points. And for second, you get 18 points. So there's 12 points difference. So Lando has to has to be fourth or further down, right?
Yes, exactly.
So Lando essentially cannot get onto the podium.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll see. I mean, you never know what happens.
No. It's kind of awesome that the championship is once again decided in the last race of the year. The last time we had that was in 2021. So that's a cool thing to happen.
So we'll see if the FIA will intermingle with this. Anyways, let's not talk about this. We did have, before I want to get into like that, the last high point of the race, we did have this really weird moment, which we haven't been able to rewatch yet because we are recording this right after the race.
Yeah.
Is the Kimi Antonelli moment.
Yeah.
So we had Lando behind Kimi Antonelli for quite some time. So Lando was in fifth, Kimi was in fourth. So after the second pit stop, Lando was behind Kimi, trying to pass him for a really long time. He was in DRS, but he was around 0.7.
Never close enough.
Exactly. So it was getting close, but not even close enough to make it like a dangerous lunge in a way.
No, because I think he was... Yeah, always. I think he would have to be at least a half a second out entering the DRS zone to potentially make a lunge like that.
Because the Mercedes had a really good pace on the DRS straight, even without the DRS. So there was this battle constantly happening, and we had Carlos in the front, competing for the podium at that point, and you could hear him over the radio. He's like, "Let's do this, guys.
Let's go all out.
Let's open all the."
And then he was like, "Oh my God, I picked up damage." This was like with like 3 laps to go or something like that.
It was heart racing.
But then, so happy for Carlos too.
Yeah,
right?
But all of a sudden, Kimi made way for Lando. So did he go wide? Did he make way?
We didn't get a replay.
We didn't get a replay.
Per usual.
We didn't get to rewatch it, like I said, because we're recording this immediately afterwards. So it was really sus.
It is interesting because GP did also got on the radio with Max that he was like, yeah, it looks like Antonelli just
made way
because I would assume that GP would know if there
if Kimi went wide
or something like that.
But the way he also worded it, I did think it was weird that he let Max know because Max couldn't have changed anything at that point.
Maybe there was just like communication what's going on and on the maybe that is Max is like, I want to know what's going on.
Fair. I personally didn't think there was any value to it at that moment, but it did change made a 2-point difference in the overall driver championship now. But I thought it was really interesting because Mercedes and McLaren don't really have.
So this is where the conspiracy comes in.
Okay, let me hear the conspiracy.
I think the conspiracy is, this is what people say. I'm not saying that I believe in this. This is Mercedes getting back at Red Bull for 2021.
Interesting. Because I was also like, I'm looking at the overall manufacturer championship. Mercedes is leading by...
Mercedes will get second.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
In that way, but that's very conspiracy.
I'm not saying that I believe in that.
Petty.
I'm not saying that I believe in that.
Yes.
Because also Lewis is not in that team anymore.
Yeah.
That is the only explanation I could have. Because why? And I'm not saying Kimi might have made a mistake and Kimi might have went wide or something, or maybe the car didn't shift. Who knows?
Yes.
We didn't, as of right now, we haven't watched a replay and we haven't seen anything yet. But that's the only thing that comes to mind.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that this is true.
Yes.
I'm just thinking like this is the only thing I could think of. Why? Because Kimi is also trying to. I don't know if he has already passed Lewis in the driver's standing.
No, not yet. 2 points behind.
Exactly. So this is 2 points right there.
Yes, exactly. That would have equaled them.
Exactly.
So that's interesting.
That is very interesting. It's like, why do that?
Yeah.
And I'm not pro that.
Yeah.
I'm not for this, and even though I do think that Lewis was robbed, that this was and this is nothing against Max.
No,
this is Max winning the 2021 championship. That's his thing, and he scored enough points and whatever. But the active, insertion in and changing the rule and applying it differently than you have all year or previous seasons. That is this is preventing making a black man creating history in a sport that is dominated by whites.
Yes.
I mean, that's a whole thing, right? But yeah, this is the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, no, I mean that's interesting, and I'm curious to see what is the talk about it throughout the week, and if we hear anything more either later today But yeah, that was kind of crazy. But the really great thing that happened today also is Carlos Sainz ending on the podium again in the Williams.
Is that back to back?
Is it back to back?
Did he get P3 in Vegas?
I don't know right now. But I mean, that's just excellent.
Yes,
I mean, how exciting. In the Williams, going into his first half of the season was just not great this year. You know, he had a really tough first half of the season, and then all of a sudden things are turning around for him. He's on the podium multiple times now for Williams, which is like...
No, it wasn't Vegas.
Okay.
Vegas he came 5th because it was the Mercedes that were promoted to podium because of the double DQ.
But I mean, it's just like insane, you know, it's like a Williams. And then
I feel like this also shows that people were giving him such a hard time at the beginning of the season. Oh, you know, Carlos, they should have never signed him, put him in a bin and whatever. And it's like, just give people time to adjust.
Yeah.
This is why, as of right now, and I get that I'm a Lewis fan, I'm still giving Lewis grace because look what Charles was doing. Charles was also qualifying in P10, and I get that Lewis qualified in P18 or P17.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's talking about that there's no stability in the rear in the car.
Yeah.
And if you, on the other hand, you watch Max Verstappen interviews, and if he's talking about what type of car he wants, he was like, I need a stable rear, right?
Yeah.
This is what you need. You need to be able to trust that the car doesn't, snap on you. And then Charles even spun in,
qualifying.
Qualifying. So it's just like, and I know that people are talking about now, like how Ferrari abandoned the development of this car in April this year. And I think Lewis was also talking about how difficult it is also on the team that, they're coming home to their families and people are just talking about, and I hear this happen and stuff like that. And it's just devastating for the morale of the whole team and not just the drivers.
Yeah.
Because like, I get that Charles is out racing Lewis, but in the end, do you think Charles gives a shit if he's P8 or P10? He doesn't give a fuck.
No, he wants to win.
You in Ferrari, if you're not winning or on the podium, then what are you doing?
Yeah,
It
really
And so now I know the talks for the 2026 car is that the Ferrari is not good. We don't know. We don't know because
March
no one
of next
knows
year. Yeah.
until the first couple of races when you figure things out. There's no more DRS, which you've brought it up today that DRS was a great implementation to figure out how to alleviate the overtaking issue. However, these DRS trains, especially nowadays when the margin between the cars has shrunk significantly, it is just like we had for like a good, 10-15 laps, we had a DRS zone from P6 all the way to P17.
Which is insane.
And then, so that means that nothing happens, especially on a track where you have to be at least within half a second
to overtake.
To try to overtake.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I talked about with you today off camera while we were watching the races. It's like a lot of the races this year, or not just this year, over the last couple of years, it was all about the starting position. Where do you start the race? Qualifying was, in Germany, you would say this A and O.
Yeah.
Whatever. So the qualifying was
the be all end all.
Exactly. It was like the qualifying is almost more important than the actual race, because on track, not as much overtaking can happen unless somebody makes a mistake or we have weather, something happening, So it's like, it just doesn't make it as interesting. I'm not saying that the races haven't been interesting. We've had some really fun races this year, but it just makes almost majority of the races not quite as interesting, because it's always like, oh, it's all about the starting grid position, and then once you keep pull, that's where you stay. And then
essentially, like once it's like to T4 or some shit, most tracks it's like that's it.
And then we have the DRS train, so nobody then can overtake. And then so now I'm looking forward to the new regulation changes. I want to do a little bit